Welcome back to History with Tim. Today we're diving back into the tense and tumultuous days leading up to one of the most significant events in Irish history, the Easter Rising of 1916. In Extra History's second installment, The Eve of Revolution, we witnessed the growing discontent that sparked a fight for independence. As the clock ticks down, tensions escalate, and the dreams of a nation hang in the balance. From clandestine meetings to public demonstrations, we'll explore the hopes and the struggles of determined few ignited a revolution that would change the course of history. So grab the pens and notebooks as we unravel the complex tapestry of events leading up to the fateful Easter Rising of 1916. Now, again, we touched on a lot of this in the last episode. And like I said, we're going Ireland reaction videos. I really don't do reaction videos that much. Like, I'll do the music ones sometimes, but I usually don't do these just because I don't know. It feels strange to me, so to speak, because it's not my content. And Extra Histories is usually really cool about people using his content. And he's a very nice guy from what I've been told. So I'm very thankful for him making these, especially because now I get to cut them up a little bit and explain things that he didn't cover, because again, his videos are usually about like 12 minutes long. So with that said, thank you so much. I hope you guys are ready to learn a little bit more about the Easter Rising, and let's get into it, shall we? All right, here we go.
The German Club, New York City, August 24th, 1914, 2 years before the Rising. Two groups of men file in and take their seats, the air tense with expectation. The First World War rages, the U.S. has yet to pick a side, and German officials in America are working hard to extend their country's influence behind the scenes. Today's meeting is part of that operation. One of the two groups consists of German dignitaries, an ambassador, a military attaché, a banker, and a journalist. Many of them are spies, working to disrupt ties between the United States and the Entente. And they are led by the cordial but unreadable Johann Heinrich von Bernstorff, a Prussian count and ambassador. The other party considers themselves a diplomatic delegation, albeit for a state that doesn't exist yet. They are Irish nationalists, some American-born, but others from Ireland.
Let's think about this for a minute. There is a war going on. Now, this isn't World War I yet. This is the Great War. This is the superpowers of Europe, the German Empire, the British Empire, the French Republic, the Russian Empire, the Austro-Hungary Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. These are the countries that dominated the planet for centuries. This meeting is treason. This isn't yes, it's treason to rebel against your country. It's secession. They are in cahoots with an alien enemy nation. This is what I think a lot of people lose in the Easter Rising about the Germans. They were a pivotal role in this. They are the ones who armed the Irish. So the fact that you have this meeting going on, and in the United States to add to that, it's very serious.
The nationalists make their proposal. They want German assistance in defeating their mutual enemy, the British. And they ask for only two things: weapons and military expertise. Von Bernstorff listens intently and promises to contact his superiors to see what can be done. Because if he can help raise rebellion in Ireland, the war could really be over by Christmas. Thanks so much to World Anvil.
Now, the whole thing, it could be over by Christmas. It's 1916. This meeting happens in 1914, but this is 1916. The war's been raging now for almost 2 years. Millions are already gone. Millions are dead. No one wants this war to continue, but at the same time, you cannot justify ending the war just because of that. There needs to be something. That's why Versailles was so brutal to the Germans. How horrible a war it was, there had to be a successful outcome for something. The Germans are thinking in that way even this early. They're like, we don't really want this war, but it's happening. We're part of starting it. But if we can divide the British, we divide the British, then we can get the advantage. But the key is to divide the British. And by making them pull their forces towards Ireland, because, again, the British Empire at this point owns a third of the earth. But if they have to pull men from the Western Front to go to Ireland, and there's an armed population with the Germans, say what you want, the German army in World War One was probably the most professional army of the armies. The other armies were much more recruited armies and everything. The Germans had Prussian military doctrine backing them. So if you have two armies trained to that expertise, now sandwiching you kind of, that you have to pull troops back to deal with, that could bring an armistice without even really needing to continue a longer war. So this is a very pivotal moment for a lot of people.
For helping us forge today's historical tale. Last episode, we explored the background causes of the Easter Rising and how politics, both in Parliament and the streets, led to the moment in 1916 where people went for their rifles. Today, though, we want to rewind a little bit and go back to 1914 to trace the web of spies and backroom operators trying to put those rifles into revolutionary hands. By the later half of 1914, preparations for an Irish nationalist uprising were already well underway. A shadowy faction of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, calling itself the Military Council, was forging ahead, hoping to strike while Britain was embroiled in a world war. But to succeed, the plotters knew they'd need help from overseas. Both Germany and America seemed like natural allies, the former because it was at war with Britain and would benefit from a revolt, and the latter because it contained a large Irish population which included militant nationalists. In fact, in the 1860s and 70s, an Irish-American radical group known as the Fenian Brotherhood had repeatedly invaded Canada as a way to pressure the British to leave Ireland.
So we talked about this yesterday. The Fenian Brotherhood, which is a precursor to the IRB, they invaded Canada, and the British threatened war with the United States if the United States didn't do anything. And pretty much what happened was President Johnson at the time just arrested them, and then I think they were in prison for maybe 3 months, and then he released them, which infuriated the English. But at the same time, he stopped it. He stopped the rebellion. It was just unfortunate that it happened because these were very well-trained soldiers that were able to actually hold their own in the field against the British Army.
As a result, Irish nationalists traveled to the US, hoping to secure funding from Irish Americans and support from German diplomats. Foremost among those operatives was Roger Casement. A former British diplomat, Casement had become disillusioned with the empire and embraced the nationalist cause. On his visits, he met with both senior Irish Americans and German officials such as von Bernstorff, but progress was slow. So, in late 1914, Casement decided to go to the source. He traveled to Germany in disguise, narrowly dodging British spies along the way. Once in Berlin, he became one of several Irish nationalists courted by German nobles and diplomats, and through those connections, secured nominal backing from the Kaiser. That done, he started a new project, recruiting a force of Irish nationalists out of Irish prisoners of war, captured while serving in the British Army. Casement...
Again, this is... Whatever your opinion is on what Ireland's place was in the 19th and 20th centuries, it's a part of the British Empire. This is treason. And this is the most nefarious kind of treason. Because now, not only are you as just a citizen of the British Empire conspiring with foreign powers and enemy states, you're now going to POW camps. These are men who gave oaths. And again, these days, oaths, we still do oaths for military, for government, and everything. That held much more water back then. You're asking these POWs to say, screw the oath you gave to the crown, remember your loyalty to Ireland. And that is... Casement is playing with fire here. And he knows he's doing it. Casement's a very brave man. Casement, he is a he is in the closet gentleman. We all know what that means. And that actually ends up coming out in his trial. He's very bold and he's very daring. and his love for Ireland is pushing him towards this. But again, I have love for Ireland too, but I also can recognize in historical context what he is doing is the worst kind and the most nefarious kind of treason.
Visited POW camps in Germany, one holding 2,000 Irish prisoners, in hopes to raise a German-led and armed legion that could join the planned uprising. Yet his plea for Irish unity seemed to fall on deaf ears. Less than 60 men volunteered, and he abandoned the effort after, according to one American diplomat, quote, "The remaining Irishmen chased him out of the camp." It was an ill omen, and not the only one. The Germans had supplied him with fewer weapons than he'd hoped for, and no military advisors. Disillusioned, in April 1916, Casement boarded a German U-boat and prepared to return to Ireland in hopes to put off the rising before it ended in disaster. Meanwhile, back in Ireland, matters were close to spiraling out of control. The IRB's military council had to keep its planned rising a secret, not only to avoid discovery by the British, but also to hide their plans from their own organization. The president of the IRB, nominally the council's parent group, didn't feel the time was right for a rising, a view shared by the commander of the Irish Volunteers, Owen MacNeill. But despite this, many Irish volunteer officers owed their loyalty to the military council and could be relied upon to fight if the military council called for it. And to add yet more daggers and cloaks to this cloak and dagger convention, there was a small nationalist faction even more determined to stage an uprising than the IRB's military council, the Irish Citizen Army.
So we touched on the Citizen Army yesterday a little bit, but this is where you're going to see the falling out. And this is actually where you have a situation, which we'll go into with his video on the Irish Civil War. You might be the civilian leadership. That doesn't mean the armed forces are going to listen to you in this scenario. Michael Collins, who, the big fella, another man, my sister actually got me a blanket with him on it. Michael Collins, he's the de facto founder of the Irish Republican Army. He technically wasn't the head of the IRA. Cathal Brugh was the head of the IRA technically. But the IRA, because he was seen as the actual military leader, they listened to him over people like Eamon de Valera and Cathal Brugh. It was only when the Irish Civil War breaks out that there's a deception in the ranks of the IRA. But this is something you're going to see a lot. You might have the civilian leadership might think they're in charge. They're not. It, at the end of the day, falls on people like James Connolly.
Led by former British soldier James Connolly, saw themselves as socialist revolutionaries and were planning a rebellion of their own. Knowing that disunity would invite destruction, the military council secretly reached out to the firebrand Connolly, inviting him to join them rather than strike out alone. To the council's relief, Connolly accepted. It was time for the next stage of the plot. On the 19th of April, 1916, the military council published a forged document that detailed British plans to arrest senior nationalists. The council then informed officers in the Irish Volunteers that the rising would begin Easter Sunday. Of course, nationalists with lukewarm views about the rising, like Owen MacNeill, were kept in the dark. But revolutionary circles are small, and a rising's hard to keep quiet. MacNeill found out and panicked. He issued a countermanding order, instructing the Irish Volunteers not to take part in the uprising. Chaos ensued. Irish Volunteers.
So this is where we're going to see our first big failure. Now, to say the Easter Rising would have succeeded at all is a bold statement. But the thing is, they did have a lot of volunteers across Ireland. But when he issued this counter order, Owen MacNeill is the head of the IRB. I mean, the Irish Volunteers. Now, let me explain to you what that's like. In the United States, we have, obviously, we have a president, we have a Secretary of Defense, and we have a Chief of Staff. Owen MacNeill is the Chief of Staff of the Irish Volunteers. He is the most senior officer of the Irish Volunteers. If the President of the United States says one thing, but then the Chief of Staff sends out a notice to the Army and Navy and Air Force and says something else, there's going to be mass confusion. No one's going to know what to do. This is the same situation, because like I just said before, the civilian leaders could say whatever they want, Owen McNeill's the head of the Irish Volunteers. He's their chief of staff. So he's sitting there like, they're sitting there like, well, McNeill just said this. He said we're not doing it. So what are we doing? And you're going to see how that affects, because in Dublin, they think there's an uprising going on across the country. And that is sadly not the reality.
Volunteers had to choose whether to follow McNeill's orders or the military council. And amidst the confusion, some retrieved hidden weapons and prepared to fight, while others left them in lofts and barns, believing it would be better for the cause if they stayed at home. And on top of that, another drama was playing out at sea. Off the coast of Kerry Island, Good Friday, April 21st, 1916. The German naval captain checks his charts. The maps are in Norwegian, and he has no radio on board. His ship, the SS Liebau, currently disguised as a neutral Norwegian vessel, is deep in British waters. And within the Liebau's hold, concealed beneath a cargo of timber, are 20,000 rifles, 1,000,000 rounds of ammunition, and 10 machine guns. They're the German Empire's contribution to the imminent rising, and while the shipment is smaller than the nationalists hoped, it still dwarfs the last gun running at Howth 2 years earlier. But when the ship arrives, there's no one to collect the guns. The captain is in the right place, but at the wrong time. Irish nationalists are expecting to meet him 2 days later. None are present along the coast to guide the German ship to shore, and the captain's worst fears quickly materialize. 3 Royal Navy destroyers appear on the horizon. They hail him, and he responds with his false identity. Thinking the Norwegian ship is lost, they escort the Liebau into Cork Harbor. And knowing they'll be searched, the Liebau's captain gives orders to place scuttling charges rather than reveal his cargo. After a series of thudding detonations, the weapons meant to ensure Irish independence sank into the depths within sight of Cork Harbor. That Easter weekend, it seemed as though everything that
Cork Harbor is also the last place that the, well, I think it was actually Cobh in Cork, but Cork Waters is actually the last place that the Titanic sailed from. Just thought it'd be a cool fact to throw out there.
could go wrong had gone wrong for the military council. Confusion reigned among the rank and file thanks to McNeill's counterorder, and the desperately needed German arms and ammunition had been sunk. And to top things off, Roger Casement, who was supposed to link up with the weapons shipment, had been deposited by a German U-boat on the Irish coast. Ill from a recurring bout of malaria, he was found and arrested by an Irish policeman. Now, the local Irish volunteers might have attempted a rescue, but they were under orders not to make any moves before Easter Sunday in case it tipped the authorities off. Everything now seemed in doubt. Ironically, the British were aware of almost all of this. Not only had they successfully intercepted both Casement and the nationalist arms shipment, but the very idea of staging an uprising during Easter had been leaked to various senior sources. And some historians have even suggested that parts of the British establishment actually wanted a rising to happen, as it would allow future crackdowns on the nationalist movement.
So this is actually a very common thing that most governments do. They let things happen on purpose. When I actually worked in government, I had someone I worked with once told me, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy if you just do nothing. It's very true that the thing was, the Germans, had they been able to successfully raise a division of Irish soldiers, if they'd been able to successfully ship these supplies, they're not getting Ireland. The British Navy, ruled Britannia. They ruled the waves. The German Navy was competing with the British Navy at the time, but this is English waters. This isn't the North Sea or anything. This isn't a place that the Germans have supremacy. This is British waters. So, and it's very common for this to happen. But this is also a reason you're going to see the Easter Rising does get expedited, because the British might have spies on the Irish, but the Irish have spies on the British. So they know what's coming. And a lot of the times what ended up happening was some of the Irish leaders would actually want to get arrested to be martyrized. But these men were done. They were done playing that game. They wanted action. They wanted it to end. They wanted Ireland to be free. And that's where we are coming to.
It seems, however, that most of the authorities were simply too slow to act on the intelligence they received. And in that sense, finally, the nationalists experienced some luck. The military council delayed the rising from Easter Sunday to Easter Monday, allowing them to meet and decide whether or not to go ahead with their plans. They voted on it and raised hands. They would carry on. One of their members, barrister, writer, and committed revolutionary Patrick Pearse, who 6 months earlier had delivered a speech to a nationalist crowd that had ended with the words, "Ireland unfree shall never be at peace," was elected president of the Irish Republic. Orders were to strike the following day. For better or worse, the uprising was going ahead, and the military council would now make certain that Pearse's words were no empty threat. The time.
Yeah, so this is a very tense moment now where we're at. We are in a situation where you have Owen McNeil saying no rising, no, don't do it. I'm giving a stand down order. We are not going to do this. But at the same time, you have the Dublin division. That's where Pearse is. That's where James Connolly is. That's where Thomas Clark is. That's where Joseph Plunkett, Eamon Kent, all these guys who are going to be pivotal in the rebellion. Markovitz, they're all in Dublin. They're like, no, the time is now. But this is where we come to this issue that, am I going to side with the civilians? Because yes, they're part of the military council, but Pearse just declared himself president, provisional president. Am I going to listen to the military council, or am I going to listen to McNeil? Do I listen to my general, or do I listen to the civilian leadership? And this is where you're going to see that breakdown in communications. And in next episode, we're finally going to get into the rebellion. With that said, though, folks, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I don't really do these. I kind of like it, though, because I really love extra history stuff, and I think he's awesome. I'm going to put his link, as always, down below. I'm also going to put a link to our Patreon. We started a Patreon. We have 5 tiers of membership, definitely to help grow the channel, get some of your inputs and everything, and start making better content. Hopefully hire an editor, because I don't know if you all notice, I'm pretty awful at this stuff, but I'm doing my best, and I hope I'm getting better with each episode. But with that said, also please try to donate to our National Parks Preservation Fund. Link will also be in the description down below. And with that, thank you so much. Please like, share, comment if you enjoyed. Hit that red bell button, subscribe, join the growing community. We're getting bigger and bigger. I think I'm going to get more subscribers before I hit 3,000 hours, though, which is kind of annoying. But with that said, thank you so much for joining us, friends. I hope you enjoyed the content, and we will see you in the next one.